Welcome to another episode of the AI Files, where we explore the fascinating world of artificial intelligence and its impact on education. I'm your host, Corey Gill, and today I'm joined by Erin Dancey. Erin's from Durham College's Faculty of Health Services, or Sciences, sorry. Erin is also the research coordinator and involved with many projects. In fact, I'm working on a project with Erin right now, so woo! And welcome, Erin.
Thanks, Corey.
Okay, we may as well dig right in. I guess people are kind of excited. I know you use AI both in your educational practice as well as your research practice. So why don't we ask that first question? Why'd you start using AI and how have you integrated it?
So I first started using it so basically I teach a research course, a nutrition course, and a fitness assessment course. And I first started using it trying to think of different ways I can provide examples to students. So I find that that helps in the teaching process, the learning process, is providing some really relevant examples. So I would use Copilot, Gen AI to sort of brainstorm some different examples that I could provide my students. I've also started using it in terms of thinking of different in-class activities, discussion posts that I can use with my students. So I'll, give an idea of these are the learning objectives that I want to cover in class, and then start thinking of, using it to help provide or think of some different examples, discussion posts, in-class activities that I can use in class with my
Awesome.
students. Yeah.
Awesome. So if I hear what you're saying, a little bit of brainstorming, right? Get a different perspective, think outside the box, think of a new way, or even recreate something that you have in your head.
And definitely, like, sometimes it won't come back with what I want exactly. But then I'll ask a follow-up question or a way to refine it, and then it usually comes back with something a little bit better, more appropriate for what I'm teaching.
More of an iterative process. And
Hmm.
now you say something more appropriate. And so I obviously health related courses, research related courses, and whatnot. Can you maybe share an example of an area where AI made a notable difference in your delivery or planning?
Yeah, so recently in my research course, we've gone through epidemiology, which
Easy for you to
sometimes
say.
students
So
have a hard time getting their heads around. So I did use Gen AI to, I asked it, what's an easier way or more straightforward way to explain this? And provided some examples related to fitness and health promotion. That's the program that I teach in. So then it came up with some things, and then I used that in the class to just explain epidemiology in a bit of a different way or a little bit more straightforward way that students could understand.
excellent. And I almost wanted to guarantee anyone listening to this episode is now going to be using AI to figure out what you just talked about.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to need help, right?
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so if you think of a lesson or whatnot, is there any time where you actually hand the reins over to the students or have them use AI as well in executing a lesson plan or an activity or even an assignment?
So I've used it in a few different ways. So I've used it, as you said, sort of like to help prepare my lessons, but then also in class with the students, I've gotten them to use it. So for example, my nutrition class, we cover Canada's food guide and sort of what your plate should look like if it's in
Okay.
line with Canada's food guide.
Yep.
So I'll get them to use Copilot to get Copilot to come up with some examples of what a plate that is in line with Canada's food guide looks like. And then I'll get them to evaluate the output to see if it actually is in line with Canada's food guide, because sometimes it won't be, it might make some mistakes. So trying to get them to critically evaluate the output that AI is providing. So that's one example from my nutrition class. In research, I use consensus AI and elicit AI. So I'll get them to use, just those are sort of research specific Gen AI tools. So I'll get them to think of a research question that's related to fitness and health promotion. And then I'll get them to use consensus, elicit, to put that research question in, and then see about, what research articles it provides. And then also getting them to look up those research articles using the Durham College Library, Google
Very good.
Scholar, so that, to ensure that those sources exist and that consensus AI, illicit AI is accurately describing the study findings.
Excellent. No, I appreciate that too. And props to the library. A lot of people forget the library still
Yeah.
live there. It's a hugely important part of what we do. Absolutely. I also like the fact that you brought out this nuanced difference. There's generative AI as we all think about it, Copilot, ChatGPT, but then there's these generative AI research tools that are out there as well, Consensus, Elicit, Research Rabbit, things like that.
Mm.
And so I love that. And so that kind of brings us into how you're leveraging AI in your research projects. And I'm curious as to what kind of challenges you faced in that world.
So I would say some of the challenges are, making sure that the research article exists. So sometimes, especially if you're not using specific research tools, so Copilot might come up with an article that doesn't exist. So it's, making sure that article exists, and then also it might potentially misrepresent the study findings. So especially with research, there's sort of, making sure that um, the article exists, and then I say this to my students as well, always make sure that you can find the original source and read the original source, because there is the potential for sort of misunderstanding the research findings. So that
That's
is
brilliant,
important.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
I,
that's important for my students, but then also, like I'm doing a research project right now, so it's important for my research assistants and for myself too. If I'm using one of those tools, I would say Consensus and Elicit are better for that purpose than Copilot, because they do tend to provide research articles that exist, but it is still important to ensure that the interpretation of that article is done, I think, by the researcher still. So you can, read it to get an understanding of what they think the research study findings are, but I still think it's important to find the original source and validate the findings.
yeah, I like that because we talk a lot in AI, anyways, about you know evaluating the knowledge or the information that gives you and having the knowledge to support it. But in research, of course, you're generating knowledge, you're acquiring the knowledge as you go, and you're creating new knowledge.
Hmm.
And you're right. It's you might be creating new knowledge off of somebody else's knowledge, and their interpretation might not be aligned with your interpretation.
Right. Yeah.
And thought about that, right? So
Hmm.
that's interesting. Um, so I'm curious now. So you've talked health and wellness, we've talked research. You do a lot of exploring the two kind of together, and I'm curious if you encountered any problems with AI in community health and wellness and personal health and wellness that it manifests or people should be aware of.
I would say in this response might be similar to my last one, but just in terms of
Okay.
the accuracy of the findings and misrepresenting research findings.
Okay.
So And I would say too, if you are using, say, Copilot in your prompt, it would be important to specify that you want academic sources. And if you're using Copilot versus, say, Consensus or Elicit, that you want academic sources, and that you want it to provide the links to those sources so you can find it. Um, I would say in general, that's just something to consider is are the sources there? Are the sources valid? Are they recent sources as well? So, if it's pulling something from 10 years ago, that might not be relevant. So you can specify that in your prompt as well, right? I want, an academic source published in the last 5 years to support whatever it is you're investigating or using Copilot for.
I love it. Right? So we can use AI to validate our own AI
Yeah.
results and have it create more tangible links for us to follow and so forth. So I like
Right.
that, right? So the better you get with it, the better you get at prompt engineering, the more the
Yeah.
better AI becomes in helping you. All right. So if we think about it, then we can start now with that forward look, right? Looking ahead, the role of AI evolving, teaching, research, your administrative work that you do as a coordinator. How do you see that all changing as you kind of plug forward?
I think it's going to be used more and more. It's hard to really think about how our assessments are going to change. I think they're going to probably change quite drastically in the future. I think as educators, we'll probably use it more and more for sort of administrative tasks, maybe improving rubrics, that sort of thing. I think more of us will start using it in the classroom. I've heard people talk about Gen AI literacy. So sort of developing those skills in our students. And I think probably as time goes on, more of us will start using it in the classroom, maybe even like in process activities, developing prompts,
Right.
right? So that our students, develop those skills. And I think that's going to be important for them moving forward, is that they have those skills because it is likely going to be used in their work in the future. So for them to develop those skills, I think is going to be important. In terms of research, I think right now, sort of how I've used it is sort of more administratively. So helping to create, say, Excel sheets
Okay.
for some of my projects. But I haven't used it for any of the analysis or interpretation of research findings. Maybe that will change in the future. But I think for the time being, it's still important that you have a researcher with the knowledge and skills to be able to interpret the findings correctly. That might change in the future, but we'll see.
No, and I kind of agree with you though. I don't mind the like even me now when I'll grade things, I'll take a look at, I'll do the grading, and sometimes if I'm not certain if I've been equal or reasonable, I'll turn to them and say, I'm going to upload a bunch of stuff. I'm going to give you my feedback. Let me know if you agree. And so even
Hmm.
there, you might, as a researcher, be able to say, hey, this is what I'm looking at. This is my findings. Do
Hmm.
you find they support that, right?
Right.
And it gives you a different view. And it's funny you mentioned the students, but I have a data analytics class I teach for HR, and I do the same thing with students where I say, hey, you're now researching data stats. If you think you've learned something, use AI to validate that what you see,
Hmm.
it sees as well. So I like that,
Hmm.
right? So,
Hmm.
um, but so I can't agree with you more. I think it's going to be part of a researcher's world. It's going to be part of a student's world when they're in the workplace. I think the workplace is adapting quite quickly to Gen AI and its
Hmm.
AI subsidiary, so to speak, apps and so forth. But
Hmm.
I got to ask that one question. I almost always ask my guests
Hmm.
this question, and that is, if you had to give some advice to researchers or educators or whatnot that are starting to look at AI and thinking, how do I use it? Where do they start? What do they do?
I would say to try it out, right? So especially like consensus or elicit AI, like start maybe there in terms of it can be helpful for a literature search. So if you're just starting out, using those tools to help find, you can put in a research question, it'll come up with research articles relevant to that topic. So that might be a good place to start to help find research articles. Again, always find the original source. But I would say those tools can be helpful. And I would say like Copilot as well. So in some of the ways that I've used Copilot for the research project that I'm currently um, participating in. So I'm leading a CSIF grant. So it's a 3-year project. It's funded through CIHR and supported by the Social Impact Hub. So with this grant, we're evaluating the barriers to exercise in a forensic population, and this is in collaboration with Ontario Shores and Ability Center. But we're
Wow.
looking at, so when I first started and planning out my project, it's a 3-year project. I wanted to create a work plan for myself, my collaborators, my research assistants, with timelines, deadlines, responsibilities, budget implications. So I put all of that into Copilot and asked it to create a spreadsheet for me. So then I had to edit the spreadsheet. It wasn't exactly right, but it provided me with a starting point. So I guess I would suggest maybe start with some sort of administrative task that it can help you with,
Awesome.
and then you can ask it follow-up questions to help refine the output. But I would suggest like just kind of trying it out, and you'll learn as you go too. The CTL has great resources as well with their Gen AI consultants. They're a great place to get some help as well. But I would say just try it out. Copilot has the attach file functions. You can attach a file, or even if I'm using it in teaching, sometimes I will copy and paste my learning objectives for the
Yeah.
week and then ask it to come up with, some engaging in class activities for my students. So just trying it in different ways, I think, is probably the best way to learn.
I love it. And as you point out too, you multiple ways to put things in, but it can actually create spreadsheets and Word documents and things like that
Hmm.
for you, PowerPoints that you can download and then work with. So even putting that and assembling it that way
Hmm.
is beneficial to people. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. Um, well, unless you got anything else to add, I think that kind of brings us to the end of this episode. I want to thank you for joining us today. I think your experience, your insights, and the connection between the educational side and the research side is very enlightening. So appreciate
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, no problem.
To our listeners, we hope you found this discussion enlightening and encourage you to explore the use of AI in your work. Until next time, be curious, be innovative, and let AI empower your journey.